Hello and welcome to XR Today. My name's David Dungay. Today I am joined by Kyle Jackson, the CEO of Talespin, and Jason McGuigan, Head of VR at Lenovo Think Reality. Welcome to the show, guys. How are you both?
Doing great, thanks.
Doing great, David.
Fantastic. So today we're going to be talking about immersive learning and the opportunities for business in the here and now. But before we get into that conversation, let's do a few introductions. Jason, let's go to you first. Tell me a little bit about yourself and Lenovo.
My name is Jason McGuigan. I'm the head of virtual reality over at Lenovo on our Think Reality team. Obviously, Lenovo is a pretty big international brand, global company. We focus on enterprise within the Think Reality group, but Lenovo is widely known as the world's #1 PC brand. So really good brand equity associated with our enterprise customers. And we look to really capitalize that on the Think Reality team, bringing our XR expertise into that space and the maturity of an organization that has decades of experience within the enterprise, and bringing a level of seriousness to the conversation when we start talking about XR within the enterprise. Our focus really is on the training and collaboration space, hard skills, soft skill training, as well as how organizations work together kind of in this hybrid workforce space that we see ourselves in.
And let's get this right this time. Let's go to Kyle. Tell us about yourself and Talespin.
Awesome. Okay, so Kyle Jackson, like you said, CEO and founder at Talespin here. And we've been very, very focused on kind of the immersive learning side of this equation for the last 7-8 years now. And I'd say, we're one of a few true kind of enterprise SaaS plays in the space. We're trying to put the power of this in the hands of enterprises so that they can organically, scale it to every corner of the business on their own, just like they do with video or other modalities and other tools that they have. So helping to graduate it out of the early days where developers are really breaking really new ground to be making it just a commonplace tool that's part of their toolbox to solve kind of big problems. And over the last 7 years, we've been really fortunate. We've had some large, multinational employers as customers, and that's grown to several 100,000 learners on the platform now. So in these early days, we're among a few leaders that have really been able to solve those frictions and get to this next chapter. So it's been a really fun ride, and I think we're just now at that kind of scaling moment, with players like Lenovo showing up to help reduce a lot of the remaining frictions.
Fantastic. So, Carl, let's stick with you. I want to get straight into that big question. What is the opportunity for businesses right now with immersive learning? Just about every business across the world will have some kind of requirement for learning and development of their staff and employees. Kyle, what are your thoughts?
It's probably one of the biggest forces facing every business is just workforce transformation. How do we upskill, and how do we balance a lot of the different forces that are now at play in these large companies? We've seen trends from remote work and kind of further globalization of workforces become largely embedded to companies' cultures. And that's happening in a backdrop where you've got generative AI, becoming a much more real player in how we accomplish productivity, and it's got businesses rethinking where do we play in that productivity chain, and where does automation play, and how do we reshuffle skills and really get to what is every company's kind of growth priorities for this next chapter, and then the biggest I think piece that's come in most recently is just everybody's wrestling with those issues in a macroeconomic environment where they have to be more efficient. They have to find ways to accomplish these challenges, and luckily immersive learning is one of those meaningful solutions. We can do things exponentially exponentially quicker, more effective at distance, and it's when you look at the skills that really we are gonna hone in on in terms of the value that we as humans provide in the workforce, this medium is really, really powerful for that, because it's really aligned to our physiology, to all of the things that make us very, uniquely powerful. And so I think it's just sitting at a moment in time where it is definitely that counterbalance to a lot of these big challenges. And enterprises, I think, get that now. It's not something I'm having to socialize. It's something that they're coming forth with.
And if I could just
Jason,
add to that,
resonate with yourself and what you're seeing?
Yeah, 100%. I just want to kind of tag on top of that. An area that we're really seeing a lot of energy is just as Kyle mentioned, with generative AI coming to be a force to bear. Some of the things that we're seeing is just a shift on the question of ROI. And honestly, we have no problem discussing directly with an enterprise champion the values of XR. The champions within organizations get it, they understand it, and they're relatively easy to find because they're passionate about it. Similar to how our organizations are. But when you graduate past those champions, how do you actually speak to the people in the boardroom? How do you speak to the people that are actually writing that check and helping to invest in it for the organization? And really, it's for us, it's talking to them about the Excel spreadsheet. It's the less desirable portions of the industry. How do you show in metrics that this is going to save you X and it's going to cost you Y, and make that equation favorable. And I think the GAI really where that's going to play a big part is impacting that equation. It's going to create more specialized, more focused, more powerful content that's going to increase your return, and it's also going to create dramatic efficiencies on the production side, which is going to decrease the investment. So it's more R, less I, and that's kind of what every business is looking for.
I do want to talk about the hardware a little bit now as well. There's a lot of choice out there for businesses. I'm not going to go into all the brands in the industry, but what are those risks for businesses that maybe are looking into their immersive learning journey, and they might be looking at consumer grade hardware and applications to fulfill that need and those goals that they have. And I mean, Jason, I think you're probably in a great position to kick us off on that one.
Sure. And honestly, it dovetails directly into that previous conversation. When you graduate past that proof of concept, when you're done saying this is a valid use case, quite honestly, all the hardware is using very similar technical specs. They're very similar processors, very similar amounts of RAM, very similar amounts of just ability to do what we're doing within the space. From a by and large perspective, the hardware and the headsets do very similar things. But when you are trying to graduate past the champions and you start bringing this into your IT department about safety and security, when you start talking to your board, and you start talking about the types of devices and the types of partners that you bring into the equation, that's really where organizations will start to really double click on that and say, all right, who are we partnering with? What's their background? Where does our data go? Are we safe and secure with this? And Lenovo has that decades of enterprise experience that I mentioned earlier, which really sets us as an elevated brand within this space. We are fairly unique in that technical space from being a technology global supplier. And that goes from everything from the enterprise trust, but even how organizations purchase. A large-scale organization, when they're looking to do large deployments, they can't just write a check to any organization. It has to be something that works specifically within the constraints of their structure and their systems. And Lenovo, as a global brand, has master service agreements with so many of those organizations already. So for us to walk in the door with a technology partner like Talespin, we make that inroad, that pathway to a final closure and actually getting that up and running and ready that much more succinct, because we have all that experience and all those roads already paved.
And I mean, Kyle, we're seeing the opportunity for businesses to invest in immersive technologies. It's really far and wide right now. But why should they be investing in immersive training and learning over maybe immersive collaboration type solutions?
Yeah, I mean, I think they all serve a very different ROI or piece of a larger ROI equation. So as we remove a lot of the frictions that Jason was just talking about, and that broad trust is really there for, hey, I can deploy this at scale and I know that it's going to, be something that it isn't fraught with other challenges that I didn't expect because I have those trusted partners there. And as we accomplish that, it's going to be a multitude of use cases that make that ROI equation go from like a pretty easy to prove to just like a complete no-brainer. Let's go to every company, every employee in this business has one of these devices, and so collaboration is used much more broadly than just learning use cases, of course. And there are use cases in immersive learning where the coordination cost of something that's synchronous is just way too high, way too challenging. It also doesn't really give the full power of what immersive can be. Like between generative AI and immersion, like this is a very unique opportunity in time where I can deliver at scale a really a specific experience to every individual. So when you're talking about learning goals, that like adaptive way of delivering learning content, because it's because a lot of these technologies are real-time based, the content's rendered in real time, because we're using things like generative AI to inform that content. Jason and I's experience on the exact same learning initiative could be very bespoke to us and where we're at, and that is one-to-one with asynchronous. Right, because it's about giving the people that space to fail their own moment in time. Where synchronous, it serves a different purpose, and so these things are very much complementary. And to get to 100,000 headset purchase at a large employer, they're going to need both of these things to help to make that value equation work. And so I think people are starting to understand those nuances and differences, and now it's just about it's Jason and R and other partners in the space job to make it just really seamless and frictionless, so that way it's easy for them to really deploy the multitude of solutions.
What's your take on that, Jason?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We look at it from the whole environment perspective. When you take a device that has the capabilities of doing so many different things. Typically within an organization, you've got business units that have their own clear objectives and goals. How do you actually approach that from the overall business perspective and say these devices can be utilized by multiple people, they can be utilized for multiple use cases within an organization? Some of that goes down to how the devices are managed and making sure you have a seamless management platform. We of course offer a broad swath of different ways of doing that, but making sure we're meeting the customers where they're at and saying, this is what you're seeing your ROI in. Let's support that. Training, is definitely an area where customers can see an immediate impact to ROI. It will reduce travel at times. It'll reduce expenditures on hard goods. Of course, it increases confidence of the employees. You get better performance out of your people, and it costs you less overall. It really is that perfect mix for the ROI equation. But when we start talking about collaboration, it feeds other needs. Especially as we find people moving in different areas. A lot of people moved from the pandemic. They moved to different locations that they're not as able to work directly hand in hand with folks. Being able to have people still connect in a meaningful way through those tools is absolutely feeding a different portion of that equation to keep employees satisfied. One of the number one metrics for employee satisfaction is enjoying and liking the people that they work with. So getting people to actually still stay connected, even though they're far apart, can sometimes really be enhanced by that virtual reality communication. Much more so, and nothing wrong with, of course, having a Zoom call or communicating the way we are. But when you enhance it with interaction, when you enhance it with seeing the personality of the person coming through in the way they move and how they interact within the virtual space, really lends a greater degree of that. Just casually hanging out in the office and getting connected with those individuals, and also, of course, the practicality of being able to mark up 3D objects. But again, back on the training side. That muscle memory, whether it's, your brain or your body, going through that repetition, going through those processes and really getting that kind of bespoke, content that we're talking about, that Kyle's saying, we can really do together with generative AI, is really going to enhance all of these things to make it so much more powerful. The return for individuals is going to be so much greater when the learning objectives can be tailored specifically to that person, how they learn, what they need to learn. All of those things getting further enhanced through the combination of all these technologies.
And of course, this is ROI businesses can achieve today, right? In the here and now, which is really, really important to kind of note within that. I do want to get to our next question, though, for Kyle. Customers or businesses or tech buyers will be watching today going, you know what, I've got some immersive learning requirements within my own business. We do lots of training. What are the key sort of elements they should be really looking for from a... We'll do software and then we'll do hardware. But what should they be looking at, Kyle?
I mean, I think it's even a broader question than what Talespin can solve. But I'll answer it, specifically to kind of like the areas where we've focused in, right? So in thinking about, removing the multiple layers of friction to get to kind of ubiquity as a modality, one of the things that we were trying to really juggle was how do we get to that scaled up content creation method, and how do we find an interaction method that supports the broadest range of use cases. And so we focused on kind of conversational simulation as that nucleus, if you will. And so that means that for us, we're across a lot of industries. When it comes to things like leadership, talking to customers, de-escalating situations, changing mindsets, personal development, like these are things that every single business has and has probably in dozens of places across their business. And so we focused in really intently on that. But there are other value to be brought forth from the more tactical training or the more technical training. So there's use cases that we see in heavy manufacturing, or even we worked really closely with insurance initially and very specific to some of the more tactical elements. But when you really, really focus in on this moment in time where like we have a really big problem to solve with kind of what I was laying out at the beginning and the multitude of these things that are coming together, this soft skills area, this human skills area is on every list that you see, 7 of the top 10 skills that businesses have to wrestle with. And one of the things that going remote has done, and being, digital innate, if you're just coming into the workforce, is we've actually become fairly deficient in a lot of those skills. We're just not as good at communicators as we think we are. And that creates a lot of other frictions in the business. Doesn't matter if you're developing a product or talking to customers or trying to communicate your value prop, like all of that is part of that solution set. So, so for us, we very quickly start with an identified use case, and then it becomes 40 because of all that going on. And so that I think was one of the good decisions that we made was to really focus in on that to help with really landing and expanding kind of this technology inside of an enterprise business. It's something that becomes very portable across business units, very quickly. Where some of the technical stuff is less portable.
Yeah, and that's
Jason, is that?
I'm sorry, David. Yeah, I think the thing I just want to add that's one of the primary reasons why we wanted to really lead and partner with Talespin as an organization was that their solutions typically are vertical across or horizontal across all verticals. There's no one particular sector that they have to be in. Because they are so universal, the things that they talk about are so universal, it makes it a conversation you could have with every organization, not just ones focusing in one particular sector. So fully believe in their pathway. And Kyle and I have known each other for a couple of years now, and it's one of those things that we've always discussed is that the market, when you're trying to really land some of these things in some of these organizations and talk to them, the question usually comes up is like, oh, what's your area of focus? And when you could say, honestly, we have value to every single business, it changes the dynamic, changes that conversation very quickly.
Yeah. Well, it's getting towards the end of the session now. I'd like you both to get your crystal balls out and give us a bit of a prediction on the future. What are your expectations of the immersive learning space, particularly over the next sort of 12 to 24 months? We're seeing so much development happening around this area. Jason, do you want to go first? What are you thinking?
Yeah, it's something we've been talking about a lot here. We have obviously very focused AI teams here with Lenovo, and we're all hearing about the chatter around GAI. Honestly, I think it's going to be a force multiplier for the XR industry, especially in the enterprise space. One of the areas of struggle, and the areas of most investment is not around the hardware. Obviously, we're very invested in the hardware game and invested in the management of, but in the content creation area, when you're trying to create content that is specific to an industry, you're not building that for a whole bunch of different customers. You're typically building that for individual groups. And that costs money to do that, and there's significant expenditure that has to happen. With the advent of a lot of these creative tools based in GAI, everything from 3D text to 3D, or the ability to actually have dynamic avatars that speak in real time back to you based on a learning model that knows everything about a specific subject. It really creates a dramatic impact in accelerating what we could do within the space. And I'm a big fan of just saying that, as we build more content and as we have more relevant content, it then helps push the hardware, groups like Lenovo to create more investment to develop more abilities for that hardware, so that way you could have even better content. It just spins this wheel around where we consistently get more growth and have better experiences, which means we'll have better hardware. Better hardware will mean better experiences, and that wheel just keeps on turning. So I think the next 12 or 24 months are going to be an amazingly revolutionary time within our industry, quite notably around the advent of a lot of these generative tools.
Great. And Kyle, what are your expectations over that time frame?
I mean, I think building on what Jason just said is, we're ushering in a different paradigm of how you solve problems. And so, if you think of today's, at learning and development groups or HR leaders, any business leaders that are really trying to tackle these, when they identify these problems and they try and figure out what's the best modality to tackle it, how do I get the outcomes that I need to achieve? And, that's really where all of this starts. It's oftentimes a very prescriptive approach, meaning, okay, I've identified the problem. I'm going to make a video, or I'm going to make an e-learning module, or I'm going to host a webinar, or whatever. And they're trying to develop that content, plan that deployment, and then figure out how to measure it. What actually ends up happening in this kind of generative world is this becomes a much more real-time relationship with problems in the business and solutions, because there was an example we were talking through with a customer just recently, and in the insurance sector, a hurricane rolls in. They're dealing with a lot of different challenges all of a sudden, and sometimes at a scale that they have previously not been able to socialize, educate, whatever. So they put all hands on deck, right? How do you quickly get people into place to be successful in that? Well, with a corpus of knowledge that the business has, they all have these banks of knowledge sitting there, and making it more accessible so that Jason can sit in front of that in 24 hours later and go, okay, I gotta start talking to customers. I gotta start solving problems. I need to understand their problem, and do that in a generative fashion, generative learning fashion. That's a complete paradigm shift for how these things are happening now. And that happens everywhere. It's not, it's a bad customer situation in a Starbucks. It's a hurricane in a city. It's a change in, the way business is done, or products are delivered. I mean, these things happen every day in every business, and the time it takes for them to go from, identification of the problem to delivery of a solution to start to move their business forward, that's oftentimes 6-12 months in today's model. And where we're going is I think those cycles will become, days or weeks. And they're going to be able to do that with this modality that is extremely powerful in comparison to what they could do before. And so you combine those things together, and it's a superpower for business. And I think that's what's really needed, because we are living in just a very exponential curve of forces. And so, I'm really excited about that there is that kind of counterbalance there, but also just what it's going to usher in. I think there's a lot of meaningful, like, prosperity and improvements in business and delivery of service and all of that's going to come out of this. And we're going to be living that in the next. we're in that window now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is exciting, Carl. I'm really excited about this whole space, and it's great to see Lenovo and Talespin obviously tackling this. And I can see you're going to solve a lot of those challenges for businesses out there in the immersive learning space. So, look, unfortunately, that is all we've got time for. Kyle, Jason, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your insights.
Thanks for having us, David.
Thank you for having us.
Good to see you, Kyle.
And
good to see you, Jason.
thank you for watching. You've been watching me, David Dungay, on XR today. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please give us a like and a share on social media. That's it from me. See you next time.